Now the election has been called, politicians will be working hard to earn the trust and in turn attract votes on polling day, with Gen Z and Millennials outnumbering baby boomers across the country for the first time. Younger voters are hoping their concerns will be addressed. Some have been sharing their thoughts heading into the campaign.
The prices at Woolworths is ridiculous. That's the biggest thing. Woolworths, Coles, it's cheaper to eat out right now than to go Woolies and get some groceries and then make your own dinner. So I think that's pretty ridiculous.
I think it's just, more about the cost of living crisis, I feel like is a big thing right now. But, we'll see what everyone has to say.
There's just a whole lot of concern about the cost of living at the moment, and people are saying that we're not going to be able to afford a house until we're 50 years old, and that's just scary for me and for many of my friends.
As a young person, trying to find a place to rent is very hard. And it seems like every time the lease is up, the rent gets increases, like you have to move out. I'd like to see more initiatives to build houses. My local MP recently bragged about getting a development cut down by, several thousand homes, and that's not something we can really be doing right now.
Yeah, interest rates are crazy. They're super high. They've just come down a little bit, but, yet to feel those savings.
I mean, I work in the environmental sector, so my concern is the environment and probably cost of living.
The views of some of the younger generation there. Dr. Intifar Chowdhury is a lecturer in government at Flinders University, researching the youth vote. And we know Dr. Chowdhury also did a student placement at Labor MP Kim Carr's office back in 2017. She joins us now from Adelaide. Dr. Intifar Chowdhury, welcome. So take us through how youngsters, relatively speaking, became the largest cohort.
Well, millennials and Gen Z for the first time are going to outnumber baby boomers. So the electorate is going to comprise 47% as what we refer to as younger generations. And baby boomers will be down to 33%. That means that youth issues, the issues that we heard about, young people are concerned about, will be quite overrepresented this time around during the election.
And so what's the analysis of this cohort's political tendencies?
So I looked at data using the Australian election study going back to 1987, just to look at generational trends up to the recent election in 2022. Younger generations are more likely to tilt leftwards, but I think we shouldn't discount the fact that younger generations are also more likely to be issue aligned. So no major party, including the Labor Party, can really bank on the youth vote. It really depends on what issue they are taking to the polls. And what we've had from the Vox Pop is that cost of living is an economic sort of crisis young people find themselves in. And historically, people, when they're concerned about economic sort of issues, they tend to vote right.
Yeah, and so we keep on hearing in the discussion about this coming election that there's this big cohort of people who aren't voting for Labor or Liberal, they're opting for others. And so you're suggesting, based on your research, that a bigger proportion than of the general population of that cohort is probably younger people?
Yes, absolutely. And if you even compare 18 to 30-year-olds now to, let's say, 1998, right, 25 or so years ago, they're more likely to change votes during the campaign and less likely to consistently vote for the same party. That adds a volatility to the cohort. And of course, there's the sheer number.
Yeah. And you've mentioned cost of living is the big issue for this cohort. Where do they get their news from?
From Woolies and Coles. That's where they get the news from. I mean, it costs so much, like comparatively now. I mean, obviously there has been cuts and there are efforts, but they're not really cutting through. And that really provides like a bit of an incumbent disadvantage as well. It might feel to a group that is already politically more disillusioned that major parties are probably not doing enough to cater to their concerns.
Yeah, and so in terms of their news, they're going to online platforms that like they're not getting it from traditional media?
No, absolutely not. So if you think about sort of like the digital diets of young people, so 60% of Gen Z, so this time around when they'll be voting, they'll be 18 to 29. They get their news from videos, from podcasts, from algorithm-driven sort of social media, curated chaos, I like to call them. So there's a lot of concern for misinformation as well. And this has been playing out in comparable democracies like the US and the UK, obviously Germany as well, where young men are veering towards conservatism and anti-woke sort of backlash for the democratic system.
And so are politicians reaching these people at the moment successfully or not?
In Australia, maybe not. I mean, obviously, Peter Dutton seems to be upping his game in podcast, trying to provide what I like to call a Trump-light version. Although there's a chance it might not work in Australia because we have compulsory voting. So those kind of very hardline conservative ideologies get ironed out because all of us have to like go to the polls and vote. And as a society, Australians are quite, we're not as polarized as, let's say, the US. So I think it'll take a fair few elections for that to play out.
And so how big is the sense in this younger cohort that our generation is doing it so tough compared to the boomers?
I think it is like sort of like an endemic thought, not even just compared to boomers. Like I looked at data like just 25 years ago. So comparing to the preceding cohort, like millennials, young people are doing it tough educationally. So I'm referring to education debt. Obviously, there's the rising cost of living. There is an increase in mental health issues, which it does not get as much airtime when we're talking about health in general as well. And of course, the classic home ownership, which is not a concern for home ownership anymore. It's about affordability. Can I pay rent? So yeah, it's quite common.
And so what effect do you think this numerical fact will have on this coming campaign with the younger generation finally a bigger cohort than the boomers?
So the easy answer will be, oh, younger people are more likely to be left-leaning, more pro-distribution. That means they will vote for a left-of-center party. But I think a much more nuanced answer is that this block that we're talking about comprises the upper bound 45-year-old millennial and the lower bound 18-year-old Gen Z. And there is a multitude of issues that they are concerned about. And again, looking back at historical trends, issues are the most important thing that drives Australian voting decisions. So right now, in a context where economic concerns are front of mind, it could be the coalition that could, have an advantage over Labor being incumbent at the moment. So very frustratingly, I don't know.
I don't think anyone knows, Intifar. Intifar Chowdhury, thanks so much for having a chat to us from Adelaide.
Thank you, my pleasure.